corruption is an enormous obstacle to the realization of all human rights, civil, political, economic, social and cultural, as well as the right to development. It strikes at the very roots of good governance and democracy. It erodes public trust in the legitimacy of state institutions, undermines the rule of law, and violates the values of transparency, accountability, justice, and fair play. It also undermines the successful implementation of all 17 Sustainable Development Goals by hampering economic growth, increasing inequality, and inhibiting prosperity. In particular, corruption stifles opportunities for the poor and marginalizes and condemns them to a life of misery and inequality. It leads to massive illicit financial flows out of developing countries. In addition to deadweight economic losses, corruption creates inefficiencies and dysfunctions and skews the allocation of public resources away from the most in need. The United Nations High-Level Panel on Financial Accountability, Transparency and Integrity, FACTI, has calculated that a staggering $7 trillion in stolen assets are parked in the financial safe havens destinations. This organized theft and illegal transfer of assets has profound consequences for the developing nations. There is no doubt that this stolen money siphoned off from the public treasury could have been spent to meet development needs, to lift people out of poverty, to provide children with education, to bring essential medicine to families, and to stop hundreds of preventable deaths and injuries that occur every day. The COVID-19 pandemic has further widened existing inequalities, pushed millions of people into extreme poverty, and resulted in loss of millions of jobs. Allowing corruption and illicit financial flows to continue in these circumstances is nothing short of criminal. Immediate and robust national international action is needed to stop the bleeding of developing countries. Ladies and gentlemen, 15 years have passed since the adoption of the UN Convention Against Corruption, which remains the only legally binding international instrument on anti-corruption. Unfortunately, despite explicit UNCAC provisions, there are increased barriers in the asset recovery process as well as their speedy return to countries of origin. Curbing illicit financial flows and recovering and returning the stolen assets can contribute to effective resource mobilization for achieving SDGs. We continue to emphasize that the requested states should return the recovery assets without conditionalities to the states of origin. We should explore the possibility of an additional protocol on asset recovery under UNCAC. At the same time, framing corruption as a human rights issue and pursuing a human rights-based approach to the corruption can help complement the efforts to prevent and combat corruption and promote more effective implementation of international anti-corruption instruments.
Ladies and gentlemen, corruption is not a localized problem specific to certain countries, regions, societies, or traditions. It plagues not only public offices but also businesses and other spheres of private businesses. Although it appears an invisible crime compared to other heinous crimes, yet it is the common denominator to many transnational crimes where its impacts are more visible. To mitigate the negative consequences on the lives of common people, combating corruption is placed high on the human rights and development agenda. The Sustainable Development Goals has aptly established the link between combating corruption for peaceful, just and inclusive societies. SDG number 16 and its target on reducing bribery, strengthening institutions, and accessing information are not only valuable aspirations in their own right, they are also vital conditions for the achievement of all other 17 SDGs. Combating corruption is of particular importance for developing world, as corruption-related crimes cost developing countries about 1.26 trillion US dollars annually. This waste and diversion of public funds have leave governments with fewer resources to fulfill their human rights obligations, deliver services, and improve the standards of living of their citizens. To this end, the Commission would like to commend the efforts of the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Honorable Mr. Imran Khan, who in his various pronouncements at the UN and other fora has called upon the international community to take steps to counter illicit flows of money and to return the stolen assets of developing countries. He rightly highlighted that the developing countries have limited ability to raise domestic funds due to the corruption, bribery, crime, and tax evasion, which is further diminished due to the pandemic-induced economic recession.
Pakistan is one of the founding members of the OIC, and its contributions to the work of the OIC need no introduction. In keeping with its laudable tradition of addressing the issues of concern to Muslim Ummah from the front, Pakistan recently hosted the extraordinary session of the OIC Council of Foreign Ministers on Afghanistan, and will also be center of OIC activities in the year ahead, including the hosting of the 48th regular session of the OIC Council of Foreign Ministers in March this year, inshallah.